Welcome to Facing the Canon. My guest on the programme is Emma Pears, author of What Does It Matter? Live with less stress and more joy. Emma, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to be here.
I know your sister Lou.
I love her. I love Lou.
Oh, we love Lou. And in fact, Lou's been here in this studio. We made several Christmas programs with her, which was an absolute joy last year. But it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you.
You've got how many sisters?
So there's 5 girls in our family. So Lou's at the top of the range. I'm like Lou's number 1, then me, Emma, and then we have Sarah, Becky, and Jenny. So all 5 of us.
5 girls.
Yeah.
How did your father cope during the teenage years?
That's a really good question. Actually, my father, I think, spent a lot of the time walking backwards out of a room like this. Okay. He would just leave rooms and, you know, he loves it though.
Now, you're a little bit of a chameleon. That's how I would describe you.
Yeah.
You're multifaceted, having done so many different things. How would you describe who you are and what you do?
I've never been described as a chameleon before, but I'm taking that with me. That's a good one. So how would I describe who I am and what I do? I do many, many different things, as you say. So an author, songwriter, I'm an entrepreneur. It depends who's asking. So often I'll say entrepreneur, and if somebody's genuinely interested, they'll ask a few more questions and I'll break it down. But I run a business, so I run a leadership development company in training, and I do that with large corporates, do a lot of life coaching within that. And then I have my book and songwriting, and I'm also a conductor as well. So
amazing.
A few different things.
You did music at Cambridge.
I did, yeah.
And that you then joined the Salvation Army.
Yeah, so I did my undergrad, and then I ended up working for the Salvation Army for a year. Well, I say working, I was there as a volunteer doing a leadership development program with them, and that was incredibly formative for me. Just a remarkable time working with remarkable people. I love the Salvation Army. We spent some time there, and then I went back to Cambridge and did my master's, which was in educational research and philosophy, and I was working with rough sleepers, looking to see if there's a way of bringing an education system that was accessible for them and appropriate for them with their particular scenario. So I'd spend my night times in the refuges working with a lot of rough sleepers, and then the mornings I'd go and unpack it all with my supervisor and work on some of the research of why we might be able to help them.
Well, I mean, that must have been very rewarding.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and actually is quite a signature of the way that I've lived life with my husband Nick. Has been kind of extremes of circumstance, you know, people with very little opportunity for whatever reasons in 1 hour, and then the next hour you're with people with a world of opportunity, you know, and different, but loving all of them. I love humans, and with all I just love humanity. And so with all the peculiar spaces I've been in and all the crazy things I've done, the one thread that runs through it all is my utter respect and love for humanity, right the way through, whether I'm working in the refuges, whether I'm with the Cambridge, or all the different things that I've done. I just love people. I love people.
And that is obvious. And your book, I loved reading it, and it's a great book. Great title. We'll talk about that in a moment. What does it matter? Indeed, what does it matter? But your subtitle, Live with Less Stress and More Joy. Now, that title is something your mother used to say.
It is.
Tell us about that.
So you mentioned that I have 4 sisters.
Yes.
So you can imagine, crazy household. And actually with the 7 of us at home with my mum and dad, it was rarely just the 7. We'd also have grandparents, a few boyfriends along the way, there would just be a house full of people all the time. And so it was pretty chaotic. But it was actually quite hard to get stressed because my mum had many phrases, I mean, incredible gold nuggets. But one of them was this, just what does it matter? So whether we spilt our fruit juice over, or whether we couldn't decide what to wear, or we were even getting stressed over what some parents would get really stressed over, big exams, or she would always be like, what does it matter? And it would just always act as a pin in this balloon that was blowing up, of stress. And so that phrase is something that I've adopted a lot as a mum, and that I've adopted through business and whatever. And what was really interesting is that in using it through business, through life coaching, through just everyday life, I was finding that it was unlocking things for other people. But my mum was an absolute hero.
Incredible. So have you been able to practice or use that expression with your own children?
I do. Unfortunately, they also use it on me. Which is another thing altogether. Like, well, mum, what does it matter? All right. So yeah, absolutely. It's very helpful. It's very helpful just in the everyday living, kind of everyday stuff, where I remember, for example, I actually talk about it in the book, but I remember one example where I was just overwhelmed. When you're extremely tired and it can be very hard to think straight, and I was working very hard and managing home, work, all these different things. And I just got to this point one evening where I just remember thinking, I cannot think what to make my children for dinner, which I know sounds silly, but when you're juggling so much, you've had very little sleep, for whatever reason, I'm really good at rest, but just in this particular moment, it was a tricky one. And I said out loud to myself, Emma, what does it matter? And just in that moment, saying it out loud was also really helpful. In that moment, I thought, I just need to feed them. It doesn't matter whether it's a cheese sandwich or a roast dinner. They just need to not be hungry. And I just brought the pressure level down. And I have found myself able to do that. And in sharing that phrase for other people to use in their everyday life, it has become a very useful tool for myself, but other people as well, yeah.
It's so true, Emma. It's a bit like that, the old pressure cookers, isn't it? Yeah. Letting some of that pressure out.
Yes.
And the moment you say something like that, it's like you're putting a pin into a balloon.
Yes.
And it just, look, if you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at change.
Exactly.
And it's that, isn't it?
Yes.
One of the inspiring things I found reading through your book, and it kind of resonates with me, is your use of words, your use of pictures, and those little statements like 5 to thrive. Tell us about that.
Yes, so 5 to thrive, again, was actually one of my mum's things. I've called it 5 to thrive to make it easy for us to remember. But I remember so unfortunately my mum passed when my children. Yes. Josiah is my oldest child, and I have Jessica, who's a bit younger. But he was just a few months old when she passed. But I remember her saying to me, listen, if everyone's safe, fed, clean, warm and loved, you're doing all right. And actually, I've used that as a checklist for those moments where I don't necessarily feel I'm doing anything right. As you said, I wear many hats, and I have to remind myself, just wear one at a time, because if you wear many hats all at the same time, one of them's going to topple over. If not, several will topple off. One hat at a time. And what I tend to do is when I have those moments of overwhelm in everyday life that I'm sure everyone does in different circumstances, I just go, hang on, is everyone safe, fed, clean, warm and loved? If I can say yes to those, take a breath, we're okay. And occasionally there might be one of those where I can't say yes to, and I'm like, okay, I need to take action. And there might be people listening to this who listen to that list and go, well, I can't say yes to all of those. And if you can't, that's the time to reach out for help, if you know that actually you can't do that list. But a lot of people who are feeling overwhelmed might be able to say yes to those 5 to thrive things, and it's a real stress reliever, to the point where actually I had a friend who I've not seen for years, we were at school together, who'd obviously read the book, because she messaged me and just said, I'm having a conversation with someone who's feeling really stressed and I'm trying to remember those 5 things, can you give them to us? And I just texted those 5 and she said, okay, we're all right. Is everyone safe, fed, clean, warm and loved? 5 to thrive.
Yeah, and it kind of reveals that things that aren't as bad as I think they are.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
It's putting things into perspective.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can tend to over-catastrophize, particularly when we're tired. And there's a lot of things coming at us in the world right now. And we need these things to act as a filter. One lady that came to speak to me about the "what does it matter" phrase was actually a single mum who had a very high-powered job as a social worker, a very senior social worker. It's a heavy responsibility. Single mum with her son. And he was leaving the house for school one day and realised that his shirt wasn't ironed. And for school, in England, we have these school uniforms that are very smart, And at the door, when she realised his shirt wasn't ironed, her mind just ran away from her. It's because I'm a terrible mother. It's because I need to take a lesser responsibility job. I need to get more time at the home. Everyone's going to think I'm failing. I think I'm failing. It's because my husband left me. And all this huge over-catastrophizing just spun out of control. And then it's really humbling, J.John. She just said to me, and then I heard your voice just say, what does it matter? What does it matter? It's just that his shirt isn't ironed. And it brought relief to her in that moment where she was able to say, things aren't as bad as I think. It's only a non-ironed shirt. I'll do better tomorrow and I'll make sure it's done. It's all right. It's okay.
And the reality is, Emma, that probably no one at school would have noticed it.
Well, exactly. I mean, he didn't care. He's a 16-year-old lad on his way. He couldn't care at all.
We make mountains out of little molehills. Why do we have that tendency to go down that route?
It's a really good question. I don't know the entire answer. What I have observed is this. I think people are overwhelmed with an agenda that there is this perfect life that they should be living. And there is what I'm calling universal happiness, kind of top-down approach to life, which is basically saying out in social media, in self-help books everywhere, across the world, across social media, there is this message that is basically what you need to do if you're looking for happiness is you need to, I'm going to make some up now, but eat better, sleep better, be a bit... exercise more. You're not eating enough green smoothies. And there's this huge list that can come across as a checklist for happiness. That if only you had these, then you'll be happy. And there is this sense in which we're striving for and aiming for this kind of universal approach to happiness. And I really rage against it. Because I really believe God made us as individuals. He made it that. Okay, there may be 16 types of personalities. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. But actually, we're far more nuanced than that.
And as we've mentioned already, I liked your subtitle, Live with Less Stress and More Joy. So how can we, what have you discovered to help us live with less stress?
So one of the things is actually, I believe, is recognising to number our days. So if we recognise, so I heard Brene Brown once say that our time is our most precious non-renewable resource.
Yes.
If we just take a moment to realise that our time is something that we have, that we cannot get more of, you cannot buy more of, you cannot extend, you don't know how much you've got, it's pretty precious. So if we just take a moment to go, every day matters and I need to enjoy each day, and just step and do the 5 to thrive, safe, fed, clean, warm and loved is reducing our stress. But also if we take a moment to just take a breath and go, oh, I'm grateful for today. Not everybody is alive today. Not everyone has the privilege of the next hour. What can I do with that? So there's a sense in putting life into perspective a little bit more. There's a sense in which recognising that worrying about tomorrow has no impact on worry about tomorrow at all. We need to look at today. It's a bit like walking up a downwards escalator. You're putting in a lot of energy, but you're not actually getting anywhere in worrying about tomorrow. There's some very specific tools that I use in the book, that I present in the book, things like noticing those. There's something psychologists use which is called BLAST, which is a 5-point thing where you may make a decision that you regret. So BLAST stands for boredom, loneliness, agitation, stress or tired. And so if you're in one of those states of mind, watch out because you may not be making decisions that you'll be pleased with in the long run. So that's BLAST, boredom, loneliness, agitation, stress or tiredness can cause us to make maybe decisions that we don't want to make in the long run. But I think one of the ways of bringing relief to stress is this sense of perspective, just perspective, that each day is precious. What can we do? And also bringing it down to this, what does it matter? And so I've taken the phrase of what does it matter and I've put it into a framework, which I think is quite helpful depending on what people are needing to look at. So the W, WDIM, what does it
Yes.
matter? The what is, what is it that I'm feeling right now? Now that sounds obvious because I'm feeling stressed, you know. Yes, but are you actually stressed, or are you? What's the feeling behind the feeling? Are you worried about being rejected? Are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling actually? Is there some anger there? What are you really feeling? So if we can be articulate and precise about our feelings, that really helps us. So the what am I feeling? Then the D, define why you're feeling it. Okay, why am I really feeling that? I know it might be, oh, it's to do with the child's shirt, but is it really to do with the shirt? Or let's just take a step back. What is it really? Define why you're feeling it. And then you ask the question of how important is it? And then crucially, based on that answer, you make a plan, which might be to let it go or make a plan to act on something. But interestingly, more often than not, letting it go is actually a really good plan for dealing with stress, because often we've over-catastrophized something that's not that important. So what does it matter? WDIM. What are you feeling? Define why. How important is it? And then make a plan.
Emma, why do we find it difficult to let go? Because I think we tend to want to hold on to things, and we're reluctant to let go. But we know that if we hold on to things, it can become a bit toxic in us. Why don't we let go quicker?
Yeah, I understand that it's easy, isn't it, to hold on to things. And for some people, there's a big difference between the minor things, the everyday irritations, and those really big things of some serious trouble that people have had, and reasons for holding on to unforgiveness, let's call it, where you're just not letting go of whatever it is. The reality is that when we hold unforgiveness, it can act as a bit of a seed of bitterness and resentment, which actually drives quite a lot of our life without us even hardly being aware. The impact that it is having, and the impact that it's having on our lens of life that we're looking through. And I think sometimes it's just a self-defense mechanism. It's just trying to keep ourselves strong and preserved, and that self-defense. But actually, what the Bible says, but also what psychologists agree with, is actually forgiveness is very liberating. Forgiveness does as much good for us as other people. Now, the challenge is how to outwork it. We can decide, I will forgive, but then our brains and bodies need to catch up with that decision. And the transitional outworking of that decision can take some discipline. It might be that someone needs, professional help to do it. On a very practical level, there's things in the book that I talk about, for example, rumination, where we might be going over and over, trying to go to sleep, but you're still annoyed with such and such, and not that I would ever do that, of course, but you might be still annoyed, and that there's that chatter conversation that goes on. There's a professor called Ethan Kross who's written a brilliant book called Chatter, and he talks about how we can stop the rumination cycle. So we can do things like speak out loud to ourselves and use our name. Emma, they didn't mean to hurt you. Or they did mean to hurt you, or whatever it is, but however you need to talk it through. But if you use your name, Emma, do you want to feel like this for the next week, for the next month, for the next year? Emma, what is this unforgiveness doing to you? Forget the other person involved. What is it doing to you? What impact is that unforgiveness having on you? When you use your name and say that out loud, that distancing helps to give ourselves really good advice. Things like going out. I know this sounds so simple for us as believers, but you go out into the natural world, and that sense of awe and wonder puts into perspective how small we are. And in that instance, psychologists might call that the shrinking of self. But in that instance, it's a really good thing. It's like, oh yeah, the world is bigger than me and my little thing that's going on. But I do think when it comes to forgiveness, whether people are believers or not, it has been proven to be a very liberating thing. It takes some discipline, it takes some courage, and I think it takes a lot of strength to do, but it's healthy.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, when you look at the Bible and you look at scriptures like lean not on your own understanding.
Yes.
Very important, isn't it?
Yes.
And then you
Yeah.
look at the teaching of Jesus when he taught us the Lord's Prayer. And within the Lord's Prayer, we pray, don't we? Forgive us our sins
Yes.
as we forgive those who sin against us.
Yes.
And the thing about the Christian faith is that if we don't forgive other people, we break the bridge on which we must cross. And there is something hugely liberating. You're not just saying get rid of or less stress, you're also saying more joy.
Yes.
So, okay, so tell us about more joy.
Interestingly, so the book is published in New York, and before it went to press, I had just the book cover available to me. That was it. So I kind of printed it out, and I went to the streets of Times Square, and I stood, and I pulled out this book cover with the "What Does It Matter? Live with Less Stress and More Joy." Within 30 seconds, the first person came to speak to me. I need that. I want more of that. And those conversations continued for 5 days of people saying, I want more joy. I'm looking for more joy. I need more joy. And there's this sense, isn't there, of like, life is short. We need to be enjoying it. We've got these days to spend. What can we do for that? So much of that comes down to practices like gratitude. Now, there are times when it can feel like looking for the sun at midnight to find something to be grateful for, because life can be very tough at times for many people at different times in their life. But at the very least, we can be, I'm grateful I have breath. I'm grateful that I currently have a glass of water in front of me. We can come down to really specific things. Gratitude just brings about joy. Being around people, even introverts, people need people. An introvert may not need a room full of people, but still a person or two. Being around people helps us to enjoy life more. And I do think there is a sense in which remembering how precious life is will help us enjoy it. I often have people say to me, I want to live a great life. I want to live a joyful life. Brilliant. So then your joyful life is made up of joyful years, of joyful months, of joyful weeks, of joyful days, of joyful hours. What are you going to do with this next hour that's just fun? Just why not have some fun? What would it take to do something that you really enjoy with your next hour? And if you do many hours of that, you end up with a joyful life.
You're very practical, Emma, and it's great how you break these things down into attainable things to do. And sometimes it is a little thing. It is, I'm actually grateful that I have got a glass of water, because many people in the world don't. And again, it's putting things into perspective. You seem to be a very calm person. I need to ask your husband if you are. But you come across as very calm. And I mean, what you're saying now, you're living what you're preaching.
Yes.
Are these practices that have been part of you for a long time?
They are. I think in researching the book, what it did was it put names onto things that I've often done.
Yes.
I think there was a sense in which, that's why this feels right to do and not. And I mean, I think the reality is, it is. How this "what does it matter" question has been all the way through. You speak to my team, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Emma's always saying, well, what does it matter?" I'm enormously annoying to live with because I am so laid back. I mean, I'm going 100 miles an hour, but I'm doing it horizontally.
Sure.
And so I do think it's a lot of different reasons. And again, this is why we're all so unique. We're unique humans who've had unique experiences with unique backgrounds and education and family. And I think part of it is my experience of working with different people from different parts of society, puts things into perspective. Traveling around the world gives you a sense of understanding and relativity of where your perspective on life. I think partly because I experienced grief so young, and profound grief several times over so young, makes me appreciate every day. I'm genuinely grateful to be alive, J.John. I'm genuinely grateful. And I feel really a strong sense of anger against the world pushing people to feel stressed and under pressure and overwhelmed, when actually God created this life for us to live and breathe and appreciate and be in communion with him. And it's not easy. Life under the sun is not always easy, but there are things, to the extent to which is in our control, that we can just enjoy the life we've been given.
Absolutely, and I think you mentioned a number of people growing up in your teenage years passed away, and I think that has given you an empathy for others and a compassion for others. What is it that you hope as people read your book, Emma? What is it that you're hoping they'll get out of it?
I hope they experience grace for themselves and for other people. That they're not so hard on themselves, they're not so hard on other people, that they remember to think for themselves. Just because a social media algorithm says they need to live A, B, C, D, E, that's not, they don't know you. Stop. Ask yourself, what does it matter? What does it matter to me? What does it matter if I forgive that person or not? What does it matter if I choose to do this or not? What does it matter? They stop and ask themselves that question so that they can minimise the things that really aren't important, minimise the amount of energy and stress that's going into those, and they can transfer that same level of energy into the things that really do. Because at the end of our life, those things that really matter come into really sharp and glorious focus. And I really believe if people had that in mind throughout their life, they would be enjoying it more. So I just want people to have a moment to ask for themselves, what does it matter? And then to be able to live in a way for them, not how I'm living, what matters to me may not matter to them, but that they have that permission to think for themselves, to ask the right questions, and genuinely to live life with more joy and less stress.
So helpful, Emma. I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you. You're very inspirational, but you're also very down to earth and practical. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us on Facing the Canon.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I hope that has inspired you. It certainly has me, and I've read the book, and I would encourage you to get a copy. It will really, as I just said, inspire you, but also give you the tools and to apply many of these principles that Emma has shared with us. Thank you so much for joining us on Facing the Canon. Please join us again.